702.
World of Work.
So today on our World of Work feature, we're discussing how to handle people who take credit for our work. How do you handle situations like that? Because something tells me you have probably been in a situation like that. Huh? How do you deal with people who take credit for your work? You are the one that stays late. You are the one that meets the deadlines. You pitch the ideas. You carry the project. And then sometimes, boom, in the meeting, someone also presents it. And suddenly it sounds like it was theirs all along. It's one of the most frustrating and demoralizing experiences in the workplace when someone takes credit for work that isn't theirs. Whether it's subtle, like conveniently just forgetting to mention your contribution, or maybe it's blatant, like presenting your idea as their own, like they take the credit. That can erode trust, it can damage morale, it can quietly derail careers. And the truth is, many professionals, especially young employees, women and junior staff, are the ones who often struggle with how to respond. Like, do you confront the person who's taking credit for your work? Do you escalate it? Do you stay quiet to keep the peace? And what happens when the person taking credit is your boss? Because that makes it more complicated, doesn't it? And in competitive work environments where promotions, bonuses, and recognition matter, visibility is currency. And I would like to know from you this morning how you protect your work without being labeled difficult. Like, how do leaders create cultures even where contribution is acknowledged fairly? And what does it say about workplace culture when this behavior becomes normalized? Share your experiences with us, please, on 011-883-0702. WhatsApp's on 072-7021-702. Boniwe Dunster is an HR specialist who's going to guide us through this conversation. She's in studio with us. Boniwe, great to see you. Good morning.
Good morning, Clement, and good morning to the 702 listeners.
Oh, this is quite common in the workplace, eh? How common really is it for people to take credit for people's work in the workplace from your experience?
It's very common, especially in organizations and culture whereby high performance is the core, whereby people are compared, like, they do a peer comparison when they do performance management. Are you delivering the same? Is somebody who's in the same level as you doing better than you? And then in that regard, then people always want to advance their own career progression through taking other people's work. And in a space whereby managers also do it, it becomes difficult to address. Therefore, they perpetuate or tolerate bad behavior as an organization. So an organizational culture that thrives on on competition between peers, that thrives on high performance, that thrives on visibility, like you alluded earlier, you actually find a lot of that. A typical sector or, spaces where you'd find that a lot in management consulting, right? Because it's about, the feedback that you get from your client, the seniority of your clients. So the more that you get recognition from senior people, the more people actually want to always make sure that their work is visible. I've witnessed an instance whereby a colleague had delivered on a piece of work, and after the client responded to thank them and said, no, please retrieve that and copy my manager and her boss in the email, Not that there's anything wrong, but because of the culture of competitiveness and the culture of visibility. So it's very common. If your increase and your performance bonus is dependent on that rating, people are likely to steal other people's work.
It's so tricky though if it's the manager who does that, because on the one hand you're thinking, the manager is the one that sort of, they take the blame. If the proverbial ish hits the fan, then they must also take the credit.
Yes.
If the team has done an amazing work.
Yes.
But what stops the manager themselves from saying, Boniwe actually came up with this idea, which we then developed as a team.
Sure.
So how tricky does it become then if it's your manager that consistently you come up with these, you're always showing up, but she's never giving you credit when she's meeting with the executives?
So if your manager is, is threatened by you as a team member who does well, if probably you have been identified as a successor or somebody that is, identified to get a promotion and they're threatened by your capabilities, chances of them having to talk about your contributions are very less. If your manager's, position within the company is, it's hanging by a thread, right? Maybe they themselves are on a verge, of exiting the company due to poor results, right? They will always take the group's work and portray it for themselves so that they can be able to self, preserve themselves. So that's what happens. And also, like I said, if the culture on its own tolerates and perpetuate that, the manager will not see anything wrong. If the culture is not that of accountability, it's easier for people to get away with that. If leaders within the same organizations do the same and the junior staff, they observe that in meetings, right, on how they get promoted themselves, it's easier for that to perpetuate, and it becomes very difficult for one to actually get to address it, purely because they say, if my manager does it and my boss's boss does it as well, what are my chances if I go to report it either to HR, to my boss herself or himself, or to their senior? So culture plays a very intricate and important role in such behavior. If we allow it, it will continue. If we are able to address it, maturely, then we are able to resolve it. And if leaders are able to give recognition where it's due, then individuals will always start, recognizing their peers, recognizing their fellow team members as well. I think it starts with the managers. What kind of a leader are you? What does the team effort mean to you and to them? Because you can say collectively we have delivered on this, but I need to single out this particular person that has went over and above and came up with this particular brilliant idea that has actually landed us in a particular space.
Because sometimes there are team members within a team, there are team members who have gone above and beyond, or who came up with something that really was a catalyst for whatever we were working for. And if you mention them, I'm sure it encourages others to also think, oh, when I come up with a great idea, I need to put it up there, because you see what happens. How do you then raise it? Because I don't know, do you email the HR manager? Do you email the big boss and say, my manager didn't really give me credit? Or how do you deal with it in the workplace?
It's actually quite difficult. You also need to understand the lay of the land and the complexity and the culture of your environment to understand the right way to go about it. I wouldn't say HR would be your first starting point. Like any other issue, you would want to resolve it with the person who has either stolen your work or took credit for the work that you have delivered, to say, hi, Clement, I saw in that presentation you didn't give me recognition, but it was a team effort. Is there any reason that you did not mention my name? Because probably it's conscious or subconscious, we don't know. Then you can get the explanation from Clement. And if it's something that's understandable, then you can say, can we make sure that next time it doesn't happen? But if it's not understandable and you have seen this behavior pattern before, then you'd rather say to the person, next time when we do a presentation, I'd prefer that we both deliver on it instead of just putting the work together, but one person doing it. And just say, I need my name to go on that as well. And if you see that the person is not changing behavior, then loop in your line manager to say, I have actually contributed so much to certain projects, but my work goes unnoticed. I'd like to uplift my contribution so that I can also get the right, recognition as well. That's the first one. The second one would be for you to start communicating the work that you do, to the right people. So instead of me sharing my work only to Clement, I can share it to Clement and all the other people that are involved in the project instead of sending it to you alone, because then, it's hidden. If it needs at any point for you to send it to Clement and to the manager, then copy the manager as well, for visibility, or just say, I'm just looping in the manager so that we can get feedback in terms of what is their guidance on this, so that they can see. So it's also important for you to keep track and communicate what you are doing, because people don't have the same interest in the team. So you just need to make sure that your efforts go recognized by making your work visible to the right people, to the right decision makers, and also for the right intentions.
Is it fine for me to sit on my desk and wait for the big boss to walk to the bathroom or the kitchen and then just walk in and say, oh, I came, I thought of this idea, but I'll take it through, Boniwe, we'll see how we develop it.
Sure.
But I think this would be great. You're almost like planting seeds.
Planting seed. I think sneaking up like that might not be appropriate.
Yeah.
But what I normally say is that when you have an opportunity to actually engage about the work that's been done in your department or a project that you are involved in, it's important to also talk about your contributions, talk how you added value in that. Do not isolate yourself from the work that has been done. If they said, we've actually landed this pitch and it's going to be great, and you can say, yes, I'm glad that I was actually part of the project because this and this actually was done by me. This particular, set of data was actually analyzed by me and I derived it from this kind of study, and hence we were able to show the comparison between us and the competitor in the market, something to that effect. So don't shy away from having to talk about your contributions. A lot of times, and it's psychological, we are taught to be modest, right? There's no need to brag. You can't blow your own horn. We even have phrases to that effect, right? But to what detriment? So you need to be strategic about it. Talk about your work to the right people. When your work is being spoken about and it's not, tagged with your name, use the opportunity to lift up your name, to say, oh yes, but in that I was also part of it, right? Don't shy away and say, I'll address it, some other time, because, it will move, the boat will move. Probably certain promotion decisions will be made after that meeting. And if you don't use the opportunity to also say, but I was also part of it, then you miss that. So it's important for you to understand your contributions fully and know when to actually then, address the matter as well.
Okay. 011-883-0702. How have you handled it? How are you handling it right now, if that's what you are going through in your workplace? So it's something you're witnessing amongst your employees. How do you handle people who take credit for your work? Have you ever raised it with management? Because sometimes it's people who take credit, but when they are, and they know exactly that your level of involvement, and when there's an opportunity for even promotions or bonuses, you are simply just forgotten. And yet you have seen the kind of contribution you've added to the project. How do you also protect your work without being labeled difficult? Share your thoughts with us on 011-883-0702. Your WhatsApp's on 0727021702. Boniwe, I'll ask you to put on your headphones as we are about to play some voice notes.
Clement, how does this actually work? Because I'm just thinking now, if you are a manager or head of department, right, and you are being tasked with a task to maybe bring in clients, and you are also given a team to lead, right? That means I work under you as my boss, right? And then I go out, I find 2 big clients. Isn't that my job? Yes, the bosses will ask my boss, the let's say the MDs, the big guys will ask my boss, well, what have you done? What have you and your team done? And he will say, no, we were able to bring in these big 2 fishes, you know what I mean? Or I was able to do it with my team, which is the truth, right? Isn't that how it works usually? The whole point of an head of department is for him to lead a department. We must work, he must take, as much as he gets into trouble tomorrow and we don't deliver, he's going to go sit alone with the MDs, right, with the shareholders, and answer as to why we're not bringing in what we are getting paid for. So how does it work, Clement?
Yeah, it's what we spoke about earlier, Boniwe, that, the buck stops with you as the manager, so why must the credit also stop with you?
I think it's important to understand the role of a line manager, right? As a line manager, you deliver through people. That's that. And you delivering through people, it means that you also need to manage performance. And what that means is that if you have people within your team that are not performing, then you need to actually provide them with the right resources and support for them to perform. And when people are also performing well, you also need to go and actually then, recognize their efforts. You also need to give guidance. So when you deliver through people and people do exceptionally well, it's actually a reflection of your management or of your leadership style. When your entire team is not performing well and they are struggling to pull in their weight in totality, then it means we also need to zone on how you are performing as a manager. So it is important for us to distinguish between a team and also a manager. Yes, a manager might have to take credit in certain instances to say this particular department has done exceptionally well. Therefore, leader X has been, given an award for leader of the year. But what leader of the year talks to your credibility. It talks to your ability to manage people, to manage performance, to hold people, accountable, and also deliver through them, because we're not, delivering as individuals. So they will take credit when things are going well, but they will also take the slack when they're not doing well. So when a manager takes credit, they also need to say, this is what I've been able to deliver through my team, because they didn't do it individually. You can't have a team of 10 sales advisors and say, I have done this. Those sales advisors are working according to your guidance, according to your management expertise, according to, to your leadership style. And the results are a reflection of that. So we also need to distinguish that. And also, if you take the whole credit and don't give it to your team, the team will be despondent. What's the point of me having to deliver so much every week or every month? But when I exceed my targets, I don't even get recognition, or my efforts don't get recognized. I might as well give you the bare minimum.
True.
Good morning, Madimeja. Madimeja, here it is in English. Madimeja, I worked with a boss. I had a boss who left last year. Our boss used to take our work credit and give it to herself, especially when she was with the CEO. She would almost like 90% of our credit, she would take it and tell the CEO that it was her. We worked with a kid, and she would also even take our work and give it to the kid. But she would speak well of us to managers that were at her level. But to the CEO, it's either her or her kid. So we know this type of things, man. So she since left last year. And one thing that we have saw is that we should never, ever do that to any of them.
Clement, at my former employment's office, most of the secretary or logistical support people actually did the assignments for the management team that were getting their degrees, their masters, their doctorates. And guess what? Sometimes they even did the online assessments on behalf of those same people, whilst the company were paying for these things. But yet these girls just were told to shut up and to do the necessary, otherwise they would never get promotion or they would be worked out of the company. So that's the extent of which the rot goes in corporate South Africa.
Hi, Clement. I once worked at a restaurant in my earlier years, and I actually called the manager and told him that I suggest that we put a wine cellar at this other corner that looked down. And as I was suggesting that, the owner came through, and the manager, without iota of shame, with no bucket of shame, he said, I think we should put a wine cellar here, talking to the owner of the shop. And the owner of the shop was like, that's a brilliant idea. That's a brilliant idea. You have actually come up with a very, very brilliant idea. Even now, when I visit that restaurant, I see that wine cellar is there, and I suggested it, and I wasn't recognized, and the general manager did not even mention that I'm the one who came up with the suggestion. So, hey, it does happen. But anyway, what can we do? Sometimes you'll be too low on the food chain that you cannot say anything. Once you say anything, you know that you will be fired.
Yeah, sure. Anyway, your last words of advice to our listeners who are thinking, I'm in this situation, and because at some point it impacts on trust, on productivity. What do you advise them to do?
Sure, yeah. I think it's important for us to be able to own our own work. And like I said, don't share your work in private, and make sure that you include the relevant people that are decision makers to the work that you are doing. And that is a way of actually having to safeguard your work. Also make sure that you actually record your work similarly like you would with any project. There's a project plan, what are the steps and what are the phases. Make sure you document that so that you're able to talk about your work, and do not forget anything when it's that time of performance reviews and so forth. But also what's important based on the second caller is to also know that the organizational culture again comes into the fore, where they would have PAs doing people's assignments. So make sure that you understand your worth, you communicate your work, you actually make sure that you communicate to the right people. If there's anything, please address it with the individual. If not, look for a mentor or a coach within your space that can guide you on how to navigate that complexity. But never allow your work to be taken, because you might miss promotion opportunities that will advance your career because you actually are scared of having to speak up.
Yeah. Boniwe Dunster, HR specialist, thank you so much for guiding us through this chat.
Thank you.